Hello, everybody. It's Katie here, and I'm here today with our fellow TSMer, Kelley. Kelley, thank you so much for taking time to be with us.
No problem at all.
Yes, I'm so excited to dig in and learn more about you and your history around alcohol use disorder and your experience with the Sinclair Method. So I just want to go ahead and get started. I guess why don't we begin by you just telling me a little bit about your history with alcohol and what that experience has been like for you leading up to the Sinclair Method.
Sure. Well, I suppose from very early on, I liked alcohol. I took to it like a duck to water. It just, now that said, at the start, I very much still had my that's enough now kind of limit in place. So I really enjoyed my few drinks, but at the time, it literally was my few drinks, So yeah, and then basically as time went on, I like a lot of us, I drank and drank until that barrier disappeared. So it became more units, it became more often, it became earlier in the day. So I think it was almost, as long as I kept engaging, it was almost inevitable, that it was going to, I was going to lose control, that it was going to control me at some stage. So that was kind of, it was certainly never a healthy relationship. I think the potential was always there. I just liked too much. I mean, some people have, excuse me, have overeating or have, gambling or what have you. That was my unhealthy go-to,
Mm-hmm.
so that was, I don't like, and I was lucky as well. I mean, I've had a good life with good supportive people around me. So I know a lot of people have fallen on hard times or what have you. But I've been blessed that that has never been the case. So there hasn't been a trigger. There's never been, thank God, a death or what have you. It literally, it almost spiraled downwards, that it became that I was very much in the throes of AUD, to the point where I didn't see there being any particular way. It was pretty hopeless before TSM. I mean, I'd nearly accepted the fact that this was always going to own me. I was always going to make promises that I was always going to break. And, I just couldn't see an alternative before TSM. Like,
Yeah, I can relate to that a lot because right before I first found TSM, I was like, okay, I guess this is just the life I'm living, like addicted to alcohol, because the torture of sobriety and fighting the cravings was like so unpleasant that I could only withstand it for so long before I caved again. And yeah, so I can totally relate to where you're coming from.
well, that's it. I had the similar usage as well. It was, if it was 6 days a week, I was lucky. It was generally seven. And perhaps not in excess, but I simply could not go a day without a drink. It was, even if it was only, I would rationalize, well, it's only three, it's only four, I can get up, it's the next morning, it's okay. It wasn't, I was well out of the driving seat at that range.
Totally. I would do the same thing where I would, like, if I drank a ton of water and kind of had my little routine of everything I could do to prevent a hangover, and I would feel okay the next day after drinking, a bottle of wine or more. I was like, oh, it's fine, I can handle it. But
Yeah.
yeah.
The
So
stories you tell yourself.
I know. I'm just curious, as you're talking, you said you would like limit it to 3 or 4 or whatever. When you would limit yourself before TSM, was it like a really hard thing to do, or was it easy for you to limit to a healthier amount? What was that like for you?
No, certainly towards, well, I suppose, for a bit of background, literally the kind of AUD having its grips on me was literally in the last, say 3 years. It really took off. I was, there was a situation at home whereby we were down to one vehicle and my husband needed to go to work. So it left me kind of away from my family in kind of a relatively rural area. And it was the sense of isolation, So essentially what happened was I was self-medicating with alcohol, and then that became to the stage where it would be earlier in the day and earlier in the day. And I would be able to limit it in terms of, I knew I had to get up in the morning, I knew I had to get things done. But it was, I would still go to bed. I would go to bed angry that I couldn't have what I felt I should have. It's ridiculous. But I, because I mean, I suppose everybody with AUD knows that, it's bottomless. It's, you generally, unless you're really blessed, you will keep going until like, I mean, blackouts were seldom or were frequent, and par for the course. I mean, my God, there's so many times that I've woke up not remembering going to bed, things like that. So yeah, I would compensate by making sure that I drank enough that I kind of felt satisfaction, I suppose, but not so much that I knew I couldn't function next day. But then the weekends were free for all, because I would overcompensate by doing what I wanted, and it became, like, as I said, like, this initially kicked off due to kind of largely kind of isolation, and allowing the routines around what I was doing to become ingrained. So I kind of dug my heels in. I kind of, instead of changing routines up or taking myself out of my own environment, I very much, I mean, God, there was days I didn't leave the house, so I didn't help myself in terms of making these routines kind of set in stone. Plus then, to add to the insult, I suppose, I started isolating myself from family events, because, it was going to be in the evening, or it was going to, I was very aware that how much I drank and the rate that I drank was socially very unacceptable, definitely raised eyebrows. So, I mean, to the point where I would basically be nearly cringing at family dues, kind of like sipping a glass of something, like, I can't wait to go home and do what I want to do. But like, I knew I was very aware that it wasn't right, but as you were saying, it almost felt that I was resigned to, this is how this is now, which is, and as I said, making promises, breaking promises every weekend was now. And this week I'm going to have alcohol-free days, and I'm going to cut right down. And I mean, I tried every trick in the book. I mean, I gave my husband my cards. I still, I found spare cash upstairs, went and bought something to drink. I mean, another time I cut my cards up, and I still, kind of found cash here, there, where, what have you, and went off. And like, there's literally one place where a local shop that you could buy. And I remember so many days up there kind of thinking to myself, oh God, I hope I don't get the same cashier as yesterday. And, they know me, they see me, I'm sure. And like, and the irony of it is I started off working as a cashier in an off license. So I was fully aware of the fact that you associate customers with what they buy. So I knew that people were looking at me saying, oh, here comes the, 8 cans of Carling Girl or what have you, and you do, like, maybe nobody cares, but you become hypersensitive to these things, changing what shops you go, what time you go, to try and make it look like it's a casual purchase and not an everyday event,
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of where we were at, towards I suppose before begin TSM it was becoming very much heavier and heavier earlier in the day. And it was above everything. I mean, there was AUD, there was my family, and like 17th on the list was my own health. That's kind of the way it had gone. So I was absolutely out of control, like, at that stage.
I think you speak so well to the experience that so many people have with AUD, the scenario of feeling angry when you cut yourself off because you can't have more, but you want more. You want to drink to blackout.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would be at parties and see people sipping on drinks, and I would try to mimic that. And I was like, like restraining and wanting. And yeah, if I was only having 2, then I was thinking about it for the rest of the night and angry that I couldn't have more. So it was like never this pleasurable experience to cut ourselves off. And then what you're speaking to too about like going to the different stores, trying to be kind of clever with when you're buying. Yeah, it's just all these things which for me, it creates this like cloud that just like disempowers us because we're being controlled by this substance. In a sense, it's running our lives, even though we know better. It's not a logical thing. So it can make you feel crazy, like in hindsight a little bit.
It is. I mean, the worst part is, like, we feed it, we perpetuate it. It's quite similar to like, I was a smoker, like kind of 20 cigarettes a day for about, it must have been 12 years at least, anyway, from the age of 19. And I mean, same thing, I just took to that. I just went off of running. There was never like casual kind of a few ones here or there. I literally almost started smoking a pack a day,
Wow.
every day. But like that, everything would revolve around, okay, when can I have a cigarette break? And, okay, I'll get down to the bus a little bit early. Everything was, do I have enough change on me? I mean, there was so many days it was like, okay, will I buy some cigarettes or will I buy some lunch? I bought some cigarettes. So it was such a similar situation where this completely controlled you. Now, if you asked me, I think the last time I actually, what I did was, I used nicotine replacement therapy, the patches and then the gum, to because I thought, well, like that cold turkey is just, it's such a cruel thing to do. And I just think to yourself, and I think unless you've got like uh a will of steel, like it's not going to work. All you do is torment yourself until you inevitably crash, and give back into it. So yeah, so what I did was, it made sense to me that, okay, well, if you're going to stop one action, you must do something to try and curb the discomfort from that, or to try and derail the addiction itself. And as I said, the nicotine replacement therapy worked. That worked fantastic for me. I mean, I think I must be nearly 10 years off cigarettes now. And I like, actually the other day I spoke to you, or I texted you about, kind of the similarities or what have you. That was probably the first time in years I'd even thought about a cigarette. And
Wow.
now I nothing them. I don't see people on the street and kind of smoking and say, God, I wish I was there. Or like the old go-to was cigarette and a beer, or cigarette and coffee would have been, my idea of heaven back in the day. And now it's just like, nah, I don't understand it. It just, as I said, it's not that I even hate it. It's I nothing it. And that's certainly
Nothing.
where, yeah,
Did you say
exactly.
I nothing it?
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, because
That's awesome.
I think that's the opposite of when you love something. Is it's not when you hate it. It's when it's irrelevant to you.
Yeah.
That's when you're free. I certainly think of things like that. But no, so that's where when I found out about TSM, that certainly that clicked with me. That in order to stop some action, you need to have something to help you kind of get over that hurdle, to try and um well, and it made complete sense that, okay, well, I didn't come out of the womb an alcoholic. This is something I taught myself. So it made perfect sense with the help of pharmaceuticals, that you should be able to unlearn it as well. And I've certainly, I mean, in since I started TSM, like I'm about 6 months in now, and I've the difference in consumption, it's unbelievable. It's such a
Yeah.
huge difference. And I know there's a lot of chatter, and a lot of people think with TSM it's well, everybody wants to be a quick responder. Everybody wants to be 2 months in and say, ta-da, I'm a casual drinker again. But the reality of it is, if you're anything like me, I learned how to drink like I was over 2 decades, basically. Okay, it really ramped up in the last 2-3 years, but all the foundations were in place there. Those reward pathways were the size of motorways already. It was all in place. Like, so it makes perfect sense that if you're going to unravel something, it's certainly, if it works well and works good, it shouldn't be a quick fix. Not certainly not when you're at the level that I was at the time. In terms of like unit consumption.
Yeah. So, why don't we talk about that a little bit? Your experience with the Sinclair Method. So you said you've been on it for 6 months. I guess first, how did you hear about it?
Well, actually, I heard about it a few years ago, and I had bought my husband a subscription to the National Geographic, and he would often leave, the magazine's line. There's a lot of obviously reading to them, and one of the episode, or one of the what you call it, monthly ones was, I think it was February. No, I think it was July 2017, and it was I think that's the date anyway. The front cover of National Geographic was the science of addiction, and it had essentially kind of a lit up kind of like CAT scan image or what have you of a brain, and that was basically the feature article, and there was like 6-7 page of information inside the article, and it took me a while. I saw it, and I knew it covered a few different addictions, and I put off actually picking it up and reading it, but I did read it, and it spoke to, I think it was an Italian couple who, or a pair of friends who had used naltrexone to bring their consumption of alcohol. Both were alcoholics AUD, and they brought it right down to casual, like maybe a couple of bottles of beer watching football or something like that. And they were, they were happy it had worked for them. And I just assumed that, okay, this was mainland Europe, and I'm based in Ireland. I assumed that it wasn't going to be as simple to just source a medication here, kind of thing. So I kind of put it to the back of my mind. And then this year I was I knew I had to do something, and I knew my situation was worsening since basically say autumn last year. And I'd been to a meditation conference. A particular guy, David G. He actually trained under Deepak Chopra in California, and I just found that it was the first kind of piece meditating with this particular teacher that I'd had for a while, and I felt that this may be the way to go to try and calm my brain and soothe myself, kind of thing. And they'd mentioned during the conference or the evening that they were going to have an immersion weekend in the same with the same teacher this year in April. And so part of that, I went to it, and part of that what you call it, immersion weekend was to set an intention for something that you wanted to see happen in the next few weeks, next few months, or next year. So what is your uppermost goal? So I knew straight away what mine was, and obviously you can keep things to yourself. And I set the intention that I wanted to be free of my addiction to alcohol. And I don't know if it was meditating on it or what have you. I knew I had to do something for a long time, but something in that weekend, it shifted my mindset. And from then on, I was on a mission to find out as much information I could about. I looked up in the months between then and actually starting TSM. I'd found Claudia's video on YouTube, because I was watching videos on addiction over and over again. I found your own videos, and I found I priced and looked into treatment here in Ireland and rehab and what have you, and it wasn't practical in terms of time or money. And there was something clicked, and just the science made sense to me with naltrexone or nalmefene. And I, through the c3foundation.org website, I found a pharmacist that I basically could fill in, based in the UK, and I filled in their questionnaire and got accepted, and a drink diary, and got accepted for their treatment for AUD, which, as it turned out, it wasn't actually naltrexone, it was nalmefene, but as a sister compound. So I assumed that it would be okay. So I received the medication. I think it was about a month after the immersion weekend we were at, and it was pretty much a month to the day, and I started TSM. So I think it was the day after I received it in the post, because there's a tiny little bit of hesitation. It's kind of, because it's you've just been handed a branch, and you're kind of like, can I do this? Can I get myself out of this hole? Yeah. So I distinctly, I do remember the day that I started medication, and I took it at home, and I went to run a few errands with my husband, and I'm not going to lie, it hit me like a train. I was very disorientated and tripping over my own feet, and I found I was slurring my words a little, and it was, and there's no buzz, there was nothing like that. I felt unwell, and I came home, and as far as I remember, I basically went to sleep for a few hours, and then I was helping. It was towards the evening. I was helping my husband doing a few bits and pieces, and I opened a beer, and that beer sat there for, I think it was 3 hours before I finally poured it down the drain. It was like tasting metal. It was doing absolutely nothing for me. So that was a huge change. And I, just for anybody listening that, is worried about the side effects, the next day I took the nalmefene, the Celincro is the brand name. I took that again, and I felt a little bit of nausea. That was it. Within a week from when I took the tablet, I could not tell you any change in me. Basically it was symptomless. So I found you acclimatize very, very quickly to any side effects, and it literally is. I mean,
it's something you've never taken, a combination of drugs you've never taken before. So it throws, initially it's going to throw your body for a loop until it acclimatizes and knows what to do with, this, I suppose, foreign substance. Like, but yeah, I think the first week, I've kept a drinks diary since, religiously, and the first week my consumption was down from in excess of 100 units of alcohol here in Ireland, our measurements, to I think it was 30, 32 in the
Wow.
first week. Yeah, it nosedived.
Wow. That's incredible. And I'm so happy you spoke to kind of climatizing with the side effects, because I've heard that nalmefene can have, like, more often have side effects compared to naltrexone. I don't know if that's true because I've taken naltrexone, but just to hear that, of course, everyone's different, but to hear that your experience, because it was similar with me in naltrexone, it took about a week for me to acclimate to the medication, and the side effects were relatively mild, but I know some people have severe nausea, and it's different, but it's good to know that you adjusted to it within about a week's time.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, that's the. As I said, it was a little bit. I didn't expect it. I did expect side effects, but I didn't expect, I suppose, to the extent the very first time I took it. But I mean, like, my thinking to the people would be, stay at home, take care of yourself. If you need to sleep, sleep. You just, allow yourself the time to get used to it, because, in fairness, for what it does, the side effects pale in any side effects pale in comparison to the benefits of the medication. I mean, it's as I've said it before, and I'll say it again, like, it's absolutely given me my life back. I mean, I'm just a completely different person, and even at that, like, I would at the moment now, my unit rates would be about probably 40 to 50. So it's still, I mean, it's still not within, say, the healthy range or what have you. But compared to what I was having before, it's great progress, and I know that the progress will continue as well. And I did say to my husband as well, if I never got any further than I am now, I would still stay compliant, and I would still thank TSM up and down, because it's working, it's doing what it's supposed to do. And naturally, it's not white knuckling, it's not a strain or willpower. It's like, literally there. I think was it last night? Yeah, I was the night before. I was having a few drinks and watching some TV. I think I had 3 drinks, and I was on my fourth. And the difference I noticed with medications, well, I recognize when I'm genuinely thirsty, whereas before I would just drink more drink, which is obviously dehydrating. So I went to the kitchen to get water, and I was standing in the kitchen, like, do you know what? I'm genuinely tired now. I'm really bushed. I think I'll just go up. And the rest of that drink was poured down the drain. But that would have been unheard of. I would have kept going and kept going and kept going before. So that's, like, to have that kind of experience on a regular basis, to actually just be kind of, you know what, meh, I'm going to bed. It's and to wake up refreshed the next day. I mean, that's where it's weight in gold.
Yes, and just to think about the comparison, what you were describing before, where you'd be angry going to bed when you couldn't have that fourth or beyond, but now it's like, sounds like you're getting in tune with yourself. You're like, what do I really need? Do I want more alcohol? No, I'm thirsty, and now I'm actually tired and going to bed. And just that sense of empowerment and freedom that comes with that, and the, like, comparison pre-TSM and post-TSM, it's yeah, it's worth its weight in gold, as you say. It's incredible. So
No,
oh, go ahead.
no, sorry, it's just going to say, no, it is. It's fantastic, and 6 months is a short amount of time given my history, so love it.
Yeah, I know. And they say, because, there's all this chatter about people. Claudia had her, like, sounds like you did too, like, your first pill, you noticed a difference right away, but I'm sure it's been up and down since then. And I think that's a really important thing to speak to. And I speak to it a lot on my channel, and we can speak to it here, just that everybody is different, and it's going to take time. And 6 months is still relatively early, considering you've spent decades building this substance use disorder up with alcohol. And so, I hear from people who they drink this exact same amount for the first 6 months or more, and then one day it just clicks and things start to change, or they start to subtly notice differences. And it can take a year or more, 2 years even. It's different for everybody, but I think it's really important, and you have a really good kind of view and attitude of it. I think that's setting you up for success, because you're you're realizing the difference, you're realizing the benefits, and you're, still looking toward the future, maintaining your compliancy. And yeah.
And that's the thing, like, I think with a lot of people as well, I know pre-TSM, my attitude was, okay, I'm up here with drinking, it's going to come down and down, nice and gentle in a nice low loop, and, it'll look lovely on a graph. And it's far more like a zigzag. It's, it literally went from 100 down to 30 something to 70 back down. It's, depending on what's going on in your life, you actually, again, acclimatize to the medication. And there's also the element as well of, I found in a number of cases in the last 6 months that I watched as basically the disease struggle to keep control of me. And I know it sounds like it's, it's some sort of kind of otherworldly thing or what have you, but like I noticed the spike back up in my drinking initially when I found myself craving wine and not beer, and beer would have always been my go-to. And to my mind, that was the disease trying to keep control of me by saying, okay, well, here's a higher amount of alcohol, and you can consume more faster than you can, like being 11-12% versus 4% that beer is. That's why I had gone to beer for so long, was because there was a greater element of control. So yeah, I'd switched to wine, and then that wasn't really working. It wasn't really, like, it did initially kind of spike the units, but then I kind of taught myself, no, this is I'm giving over more control because it's a stronger drink. So I did, what I didn't want to do was try and outdrink the TSM or outdrink the NAL, which is what happens I think for a lot of people on spirits or what have you. It can be very hard to gauge where the point is that you actually don't want more alcohol, because the stronger the drink, the quicker you're getting drunk. And the other thing I noticed as well was I had a slip in compliance. In the last couple of months, I noticed, over a couple of weeks, I noticed a real ramping up of craving alcohol chatter in my head, and I just couldn't pinpoint. And I was on the Facebook group Sinclair Warriors, lamenting these sudden conditions, and you worry, because you worry, is this, am I losing my ground here? Are things unraveling? And I racked my brain, and it took me about 2 weeks to realize that there were several times where I was late taking my pill. Maybe I'd slept it out completely because I don't feel anything when I take the pills anymore. And I thought I'd taken the pill, but in actual fact, I remembered taking it yesterday. So I ended up taking the pill, but not stopping drinking and saying, okay, wait the hour for that to take effect. And another couple of occasions, I remembered that it was, say, 30-40 minutes in, and I was kind of like after taking the tablet, and I was saying to myself, you know what, it's okay, I really don't have to wait the hour, I'll go ahead and open a drink now, it'll be grand, like, sure, I'll only have a few mouthfuls, what have you. And it was literally, I'd say it was maybe 7 instances in total of basically not following the golden rule, wait an hour, or being late taking the tablet, realizing after the fact that I hadn't taken the tablet that day. And that was enough to basically ramp up the consumption and the craving and the alcohol chatter. And that made it very, very clear in my mind that those tablets are doing what they're supposed to be doing every single time you take them. And complacency is not a good idea, ever, And I'm still trying to gain back the ground I lost a month later, in terms of certainly I'm still experiencing a rise in craving and a rise in chatter, thinking about it more often in the day and what have you. But I'm not panicking, because I know I got there before, and I know once I remain compliant, I'll definitely get back there again, but just, you just can't afford to think, it's okay if I don't have a pill today. It's every single one is doing what it's supposed to do.
Yes, for sure. And I think that's so important that you're speaking to that, because, whether it's by accident because you thought you took the pill, or, I hear from people who are trying to kind of sabotage themselves in a way by not taking the medication, or they, for whatever reason, but compliancy is huge, and like that's why it's called the golden rule. It's really the key to success. And however, life happens, not everyone's going to comply every time. And so just hearing your perspective that, you know, you saw the difference from not complying, and at the same time, you know that by complying, you will get to where you want to go. And so even if you slip up, even if you forget and you fall back a little bit, you can still get back on and keep going and keep progressing with your goal.
Yeah. I know more than one person who is on their second or more time of trying the method. So, and like that, it's like self-sabotage, or for whatever reason, you know, they just fell by the wayside or went back to old habits. But it is something that is, yeah, you have to put the legwork in. It's and I suppose a big element is being patient. It's giving something the time to work. And I mean, the way we are nowadays, the way everybody lives, it's instant gratification with everything. Everybody wants something yesterday. You know, nobody wants to kind of give things the chance, or just, you know, like, I mean, the Sinclair method is around since what? The medication is around since the 60s. I mean, it's working. It always has worked. You just got to give it the chance to. But that was the other thing as well. I see a lot of people worrying about, you know, am I going to be, you know, the way the general kind of rule is, okay, this works 80% of the time. But it's my understanding that in a lot of the cases of the other 20%, it is self-sabotage, or it's another outside factor. It's not just that, you know, any one person can be immune to it. And I think that's the big thing with a lot of people, is they panic thinking, well, I'm going to be in that 20%. Whereas in actual fact, it's just, you nearly have to switch off that fear in your brain, because what's the alternative? You know, you don't take the tablets and you continue as you're going. I mean, to be honest with you, like in my case, I had, I'd broached my GP initially 2 years ago, and I went in with the wrong attitude. I went to my GP and I basically said, listen, I have a problem with alcohol. I don't want to do AA. I don't want to go to counselling, and you fix this for me now. And in actual fact, I'd done a bit of homework, and I heard about the drug antabuse, which essentially makes you horribly sick if you do drink on it. So I was already going down the right route with pharmaceutical, but I mean, my GP sat me down and read through the horrible and dangerous kind of side effects associated with that medication. And she said to me, I really don't want to prescribe anything like that for you. And she basically asked me to cut down my units, but I think I went in with the wrong attitude. I went in with her with, you know, I'm not doing this and I'm not doing that and the other, and expecting her to fix, you know, while I was going in almost confrontational. But what happened was I came out with no solution, and it's very hard to open yourself up to what is at that stage in your life your deepest, darkest secret. You know, this is the thing you hate the most about yourself, is what you're doing and the priority it takes in your life. So I came away from, my GP ran a liver function test actually, and she rang me a few weeks later to say that my liver was A-okay. But I came away from that appointment, which I admittedly mishandled myself, very angry, and my drinking really ramped up then. And by the time I went back to my GP, would have been late last year and or mid last year, and I was having problems with high blood pressure. And she, unbeknownst to me, did another liver function test, and she just said she was going to do a few different tests in case there was another factor, because she said blood pressure is often, you know, an echo of another problem. And she rung me up and she said, listen, she said, you're, you know, say the level of the enzyme in your liver, your blood that breaks down alcohol, the level of that's safe is, say, up to about 40. She said yours is at 151. She says your liver is crying out here. She says you have to do something about this. And it really shook me. It really shook me. Because well, she said, look, because I didn't understand the mechanics of it, and I said to her, like, is my liver scarred? What's happening here? And she said no, but she said basically what that means is that your liver is scrambling constantly to break down the alcohol, that you're not giving yourself any alcohol for days. It's being overwhelmed. And she said, I can't tell you said at what point that will become very dangerous, but she said it is like flicking a switch. And she said essentially what happens then after that, if your liver starts to fail, she said you're talking hospital, you're talking a transplant list, you're talking And she said, let me tell you, said, of people that are referred into hospital for liver failure or liver transplant, she said 50% of them don't come back out. So this was a real wake up call for me. You know, it was. Now that said, it still took me another couple of months after that, before I actually did, as I said, set the intention to overcome my alcohol addiction. But my husband would say that of me as well. When I say I'm doing something, I'm like a dog with a bone. I'm doing it, and that's it. So I think that was basically the kick I needed to say, okay, look, you know, okay, you don't have control, but there are things that can be done, and you have to do something about it. You have to mind yourself. You want to be here for your kids. You know, you want to be enjoying your life, not just making it through it, which is what you are, just making it through it when you have AUD. It's you know, you're existing, you're not living, you know. So that's kind of that's where we were with that. Anyway, that was, as I said, the real wake up call was, okay, look, you know, you're really hurting your body, you know.
I had no idea you had issues with your liver before going on the Sinclair method. I didn't realize. That's insane. I couldn't imagine being faced with that. Like when you're so addicted and it's like ruining you. Like I've talked to some other people who had liver issues too. I don't understand medically what was wrong, but she couldn't stop drinking, even though she knew she was like killing herself, because the addiction was so strong. And she too found the Sinclair method and now I think is alcohol free. But wow, I just didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it's as I said, it was bad. I mean, and like I was quite naive as well. I mean, I thought there was an element of safety that I was drinking such a low alcohol beer, but it's like everything and anything, you know, it's down to the individual, it's down to the amount, but it's down to your own body. And like that was my body saying, oh, you know, this is 20 years of this, would you not mind yourself? And the irony as well, it was at the time I was exercising and I was I was watching my diet as well. So my husband would laugh and would say, like, you're doing all these good things for yourself and you go against yourself completely every time you pick up a drink.
My husband said the exact same thing.
What are you doing?
I know. He's like, it doesn't make sense. You're like crazy about what you eat and exercise, and then you like go get drunk. I'm like, I know.
But that's what that, like, for me, that's what I kept saying to him. Like, this is my Achilles heel. Like, this is you know, I can be good with these other things, but this was the one thing that just overwhelmed me. You know that. But no, that's kind of where we are with that. Yeah.
Wow. So I know some doctors will do a liver test before going on the naltrexone or nalmefene, because at really high doses, like way higher than the 50 milligram dose of naltrexone, like I think in the 300s, it says that it can impact the liver or, you know, cause potential harm to the liver. So some doctors do test to make sure your liver is healthy. So you went into it with an unhealthy liver, but that was okay. Like you didn't have any issues.
No, in actual fact, my doctor was actually researched the medication as well, and it became apparent researching it that nalmefene actually isn't metabolized in the liver. So in those terms, it certainly shouldn't add to any what you call it, any damage. But I know that my doctor's saying that, well, everything has to be metabolized somewhere, so it's probably the kidneys then, because otherwise the drug will be active in your body, you know, continuously. But I suppose to kind of go back a couple of steps there. Initially, yeah, I had been using a pharmacy through the c3foundation.org, and I've been getting the medication with them, but it was expensive. Now it was expensive, but for what it was doing, it was absolutely worth it. I mean, I think for a 28 pack of Salincro, it was working out about around €150.
Wow.
And so a month's supply, and I'm a daily drinker, so literally was just a month's supply kind of thing. And so I was thinking about it. I'd been thinking about it for a long time, probably for a few months, and I suppose to hark back to that initial appointment I had with my GP, I was kind of thinking to myself, well, okay, I'll research and I'll see if I can't, you know, approach my GP and see if she would be happy to prescribe the medication for me. So I did a bit of research, and I found out that the kind of the Public Health Board, I suppose, is the Health Services Executive here in Ireland. I actually found on their website that Salincro nalmefene is actually available in Ireland and is reimbursable, which is it basically means that if you have a GP medical card, that you essentially get medication for free, which I do have. Like so, that was strong incentive, financial wise. It was a strong incentive to approach my GP, especially seeing as we're 4 children, 2 adults on one month's wage. So this is going to make a big difference if I could essentially source the medication for €2 versus 150 a month. So basically, I did my research and I printed some papers I read on the Sutury Foundation website about how to approach your healthcare provider. Plus, in Dr. Roy Scappa's book, there's a section for healthcare providers as well towards the end of the book before the appendices in it. So I basically I made an appointment with my GP, and I went down to her and explained to her that I explained to her that I was still, you know, that I was, you know, a victim of alcohol use disorder, and I explained to her that I had sourced the medication from elsewhere, and that it had been working. I brought down my drinks diaries, I brought down the article from National Geographic, and the book, Dr. Roy Scappa's book. So essentially to try and give her some information from different sources, because otherwise, you know, if you hand somebody just a book, she's going to say, well, it's their book. They're going to say that, you know,
Yeah.
that's development. And just little things like I made sure I was dressed smart and, you know, looked well or what have you going down, because, you know, all these things go to credibility, you know, when you're asking somebody to help you out kind of thing. And I did, I actually, before I went down to GP, I spoke to my pharmacist who actually fills my Salincro order, and I spoke to her about being worried about approaching my GP after sourcing the medication from a third party, because, you know, it's I'm asking her then to take care of my health while I went elsewhere for medication kind of thing. And my pharmacist said, well, look, all you can do is, they said no GP is going to thank you for taking medication when you didn't go through them or through another qualified healthcare provider here. So she said, all you can do is say, you know, look, you know, you weren't sure if it was going to work. You wanted to give it a try, and, you know, essentially throw yourself at their mercy. You know,
Yeah.
ask forgiveness and ask permission kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I went to the GP, and in fairness, she listened to everything I had to say. I think I was in with her for an hour, and I just said to her, look, you know, I said, I'm sorry that I went kind of, you know, around you with this, but I said I didn't know if it was going to work, and now I know it is working, and it's certainly doing what it's supposed to do. So I said to her that, you know, I'll just let you have a look at some of the materials or what have you, and you know, I still had, I think, half a month's medication. So I said to her, I'll give you, or you bring me, or I'll bring you, or email you in a week or two, and, you know, have a think about it kind of thing, because obviously nobody likes being put on the spot. Plus she had to do her own research. So I think it was a week later, her secretary rang me and said the doctor is absolutely happy to prescribe the medication for you, but says she just wants you to come in for another chat. So it was a couple of she just had more questions. A few things had been covered, but I mean, you know, from the method, for something that seems so simple as just take the medication away an hour, there is so much information behind it, and it's so you know, there's so many facets and differences per person, and you know, everybody's form of, you know, AUD is different. Everybody's reaction to the medication is different. So I knew that I was happy that she had questions, and I was extremely happy that it was there and then. Actually, she printed out a prescription for 2 months, and she said, come back to me then and show me your drinks diary, and we'll continue from then. You know, so I went straight to my pharmacy, where the pharmacist, Rachel, that I've been speaking to, was there, and I basically danced up to that counter with that prescription, because I'd been speaking about the whole thing with her, and she said she was absolutely delighted, you know, that I was able to source it and what have you. So yeah, so that was that was a small victory, especially off the back of the initial consultation with the GP when I kind of came out with my problem of AUD. It kind of left nobody happy.
Yeah, I know. I love stories like that too, where you kind of educate your doctor and now, she's potentially using it with other people too. And it's this like grassroots effort to really get this in the hands of as many physicians as possible, this knowledge and the success of it.
Well, that's it. And especially I couldn't understand how a method could be so unknown, but yet this medication was licensed, by our health services executive, for to be dispensed, and with the use being, alcohol use disorder. I mean, that's what it's licensed for here. And I couldn't understand. I was looking on the actual HSC's website, and it seemed to be that for all of Ireland from, I think it was April 2017 to 18, I think there was I think a little over 3,000 prescriptions.
Wow.
It's like, and I said that to my doctor. She said that's nothing. So that's absolutely nothing. So it means that despite the fact that it's licensed and that it's reimbursable, nobody's prescribing it. She said the vast majority of the people who are prescribing, she said, are probably addiction consultants. So they're probably private practitioners, or they're probably, this is their area of expertise. It's unlikely that a lot of those are GP prescriptions. So
Yeah.
it's essentially unknown.
I know, it's unbelievable to me. And I really feel like this is a shift. Like, thanks so much to C3 Foundation and what Claudia is doing. And I now work for a telemedicine company called Ria Health that really sets people up for success using this method. And there's other telemedicine companies popping up, and telemedicine is a possibility, which to me is like a huge thing with regards to the shame aspect of really admitting that you have an alcohol problem. Because when I'd never admitted that to people. Like, I was a heavy drinker. I never would have said, okay, I've got a problem. And when I first was looking for a doctor, before I knew about the C3's list of physicians, I was like calling everyone and getting the door slammed in my face, and it felt awful. And I was even like, well, maybe I don't have a problem. They're trying to say I need rehab and detox. I guess that's when I have a problem. But it's like, no, I have a problem now because it's controlling me, and it's on the way to me needing rehab or detox. So yeah, it's just, I really feel like it's changing. Like, it's slowly but surely getting to be more well-known and out there. And I'm just excited to see what the next 5-10 years brings with it.
Absolutely. And I mean, for me, I mean, what beggars belief is when you look at TSM versus rehab or versus AA, I mean, to me, it looks like a no-brainer. I mean, it's there, you from the comfort of your own home, if without cognitive behavioral therapy or anything else, if that's what you don't want to do, you don't have to do therapy, you don't have to do anything. All you've got to do is take the tablet and drink, basically as you would normal. And but as you've covered in plenty of your videos as well about being mindful, I mean that is a huge, once you're, I suppose, on the Sinclair Method for a little while, is watching the difference between being mindful, watching the difference between what is craving and what is habit. And I certainly know for most people at the start you should treat both as the same thing. But when you're established and comfortable on the method, it makes perfect sense that you should start trying to say to yourself, okay, do I really want another drink, or is this just a knee-jerk reaction kind of thing? But no, for as I said, it's so alarmingly simple compared to, I mean, my alternative, if I hadn't found this method, would have been, trying to find somebody to mind 4 children for a month while I went into here it's generally like there's rehab centers, but I mean the main one is a mental hospital. So I mean you're in with a multitude of people with multiple problems, essentially, as we call it here in Ireland, drying out, and what you do after that, either through privately or through your healthcare provider, you pay, tens of thousands for that stay to come out to the same problems, the same triggers, the same alcohol chatter. It's almost inevitable. Like, it just, to me, it just seems like the simplest thing to do. And I have actually had a case before where a stage before the year that I was getting married, I think that was about 6-7 years ago, and I knew that it was my wedding day was going to be a problem going to be a long day, and it's going to be a problem if I had anything to drink. So I actually, um, I wanted to make a change, and I went to 2 AA meetings 2 weeks in a row. And for anybody that it works for, I'm not knocking it. I just speak as to my own experience, but I found that essentially it was a group of, certainly my experience here at the local meeting was a group of 10, 15 people, and everybody was telling the worst stories that they could of their drunken behavior. And look, I mean, other people have suffered, and I mean, unfortunately, it's almost like everybody except the person who's drunk suffers when they're drunk, because it's unlikely you're making memories at that stage, but your loved ones can remember the things you said, the things you did, and they're the ones getting the brunt of the pain, kind of thing. But it just never made sense to me that you could get better, that you could help yourself with negativity, because it's the shame and it's the wallowing. I know probably at essence that the idea is to remind yourself of these terrible things as a deterrent, as many people in the meetings had been who were there. It spoke to being 2, 3, 10 years, 20 years, one person away from since they last drank, but to me it just I don't know, it was almost like it, to my mind, it was almost like disciplining a child by spanking them. It's okay, you might get the result in the short term, but it's pain, it's suffering, it's not going to lead to positivity and to making you feel lighter and more hopeful. And anyway, as I said, I sulked in the meetings and I refused to share in either. And I just kind of said, I'm not going back there again, which is why I spoke to my doctor saying that just wasn't.
Yeah.
And but no, that year as you were saying as well, I white knuckled it, and I think for about 4 months that year I had absolutely nothing, and I felt the better. I really did feel the better. I really enjoyed my wedding. I really enjoyed our little holiday afterwards and our stay and what have you. But it was literally the first holiday myself and my husband were on by ourselves. Then, our belated honeymoon a couple of months later. I think it was the first night we were there, have a couple of drinks. By the end of that holiday, it was business as usual. I mean, it was so scary how slippery that slope was and how fast, it fell down, it kind of thing. It's without something else to undo that behavior that you've learned. The second you put your foot back in, you're back in, you're right where you were, and very, very quickly. Like,
it's so true. It's so true. I want to ask you, for so many people, when you start to change your relationship to alcohol, it impacts so many things in your life. So what have been some of your big life changes and improvements that you've noticed the past 6 months that, couldn't have been if you were still knee deep in this alcohol use disorder?
Sure. I suppose the biggest element is how much time, straight off, how much time having alcohol use disorder takes. Because if you're not drinking, you're thinking about drinking, or you're hungover. It's if you're not awake, alcohol's got you. If you're not asleep, alcohol's got you in some way, shape, or form. So the first thing was that it shortened that whole window for me of, I am having, a relatively like single numbers of drinks, in a shorter kind of window, or just to the evening, or what have you. So it meant that hangovers. I think since I've started the method, I've had maybe 2 bad hangovers. That's it.
Wow.
And I've had no blackouts at all in the 6 months I've been on it, and that was a regular thing, which is really scary, because I know from a bit of reading and what have you, that essentially like a drunken blackout is actually a form of brain damage. Your brain has stopped making memories, which is why you can't remember, because it's so intoxicated it can't function. So I mean, like, if you're having frequent blackouts, it's not good. Your brain's taking the brunt of it, kind of thing. But the other things that I noticed actually was like yourself, I could kind of go back at healthy eating and exercise. I recently I had been kind of doing that kind of thing by myself, and I've been running and stuff like that, but I joined a local gym, and it's great actually. They had a kind of a challenge, which was that you work with them for 6 weeks, and you basically you follow their healthy eating plan, and you work out with them at least 3 times a week, and they give you a target of losing X amount in that time. So I was hoping, I was kind of jumping the gun a bit. I was hoping that if I signed up to that challenge, I would actually drastically cut back my drink, and it did work for the first week. But I was also forcing it as opposed to it being an organic thing. So it was almost inevitable I would slip back to a certain level kind of thing. So while I didn't lose the amount of weight I wanted to, I did lose, I think it was 6% body fat, but I went down
Wow.
a dress size as well.
I know you posted a photo and there's an obvious difference. You lost a good amount of weight.
Thanks very much. But it wasn't, that's what I love about working out as well. I mean, it's not like initially I signed up to that challenge because I wanted to see the number on the scales change. But I mean, that's the least of the pluses. I mean, you feel stronger, you have more energy. I mean, I was eating so much better that things like, your hair, your nails, your skin are so much better, I mean, as I was saying to the guy who runs the gym after the fact, he was saying, like, how's your energy levels? And I said, let's put it this way, my house has never been cleaner. Like, it would have fallen by the wayside beforehand. But it's the confidence of feeling stronger and better. And the place I'm in is no frills. It's people like me. It's, generally kind of mums or dads kind of thing, wanting to be tired of feeling sluggish all the time and wanting to, improve themselves. So there's a whole social side. I mean, I've made 4, 5, 6 friends since, starting there, and everybody has the same thing in common. You're all going to the same place. So there's a great kind of camaraderie to the place. I suppose other aspects as well would be, I've taken back up other hobbies that other, my kind of passions before the AUD took over, kind of, reading, kind of, little bit of knitting and crochet and stuff like that. And all the things I kind of would have done before, but didn't. I mean, other things like I'd started doing a declutter around the house, because we've a small house, and it's 6 of us in it, so clutter builds up fast. So I'd taken my foot off the gas with that because the AUD had taken over. But essentially I got back to decluttering and either giving giving things to charity or selling things. And I've actually managed to pay for a lot of my gym membership, my monthly fees, through basically cleaning up and selling things online that I don't use anymore, I don't need, things like that. It's just, and that's kind of become a little passion side project for me as well. But no, it's just I like that I was saying before about things like, meeting up with family and not wanting to be out in the evening and things like that. I can actually do that now without sitting there looking at a family member trying to have a conversation with me while I'm going, I want to drink.
Yeah.
So it's
it's amazing the level of engagement. That's like something I noticed right away, because I thought I was, engaging with someone, I was listening, whatever. But when the alcohol cravings and thoughts started to be removed, I realized like I wasn't really listening or present. And now it's night and day to be able to really connect and engage and not have that chatter in the mind.
And that's the thing. I think a lot of it is what TSM kind of affords you as well is that lightness. It's, it is literally like a weight's being lifted off you, whereby, you feel better about yourself. You feel hopeful. You feel, like that you pick up old passions and loves. And I mean, that all very much ties into mental health as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge part of it. And I mean, like, everybody knows alcohol is a depressant. I mean, how could you not end up, I mean, it's almost inevitable you would feel unwell between, how badly you're treating your body, and then the hangovers, and then the shame, and it's just to feel the release, to not to have to worry about any of that. Like, it's just absolutely fantastic. Like,
yeah. And it's like you used the word organic before. Like, even though you're taking a medication, it does feel like it's happening naturally, like, because you're coming back to the person you were that didn't have this learned addiction nested in your mind and your being. It does feel organic, and that was so freeing. I remember when I first started to realize, like, oh my gosh, I don't need to finish this glass of wine, and like I can just go out and have one and not worry about being the person who's blackout drunk making an ass of myself. Like, that is so empowering, and that just builds and builds and builds the longer you're on the Sinclair method and the more you really come back in control over the alcohol.
That's it. And I think, but the large part of it as well, though, I think when you start experiencing that yourself, is all you want to do is shout it from the mountaintops, and you want to tell everybody, and you can see people left, right, and center in your life and around you who are in similar situations. Because I mean, especially if you've been embroiled with AUD for a long time, you do tend to surround yourselves with, people like to enable other people, and you do find yourself like associating with people who have a similar tastes, shall we say, kind of thing. And yeah, it's amazing. A lot of people get their head in the sand about the whole thing, and like little things. Like I've actually donated my copy of Dr. Scap's book down to our local kind of free cycle center, which is essentially it's an area that everybody brings to recycle kind of materials and stuff. But there's a bookshelf in the building itself which has books that you can either leave or take. So and the turnaround is quite quick. I've left a lot of stuff down there before, so what I did was I left my book in there with basically a short message on the inside sleeve saying that or the inside of the first few pages saying that what my name was, if if you want to contact me, I know a doctor locally who can prescribe some medication, and I know a pharmacist who can supply it. And if you've any questions at all, I'd love to help somebody. And all I ask you to do is please replace this book where you took it from, so it can help somebody else. And I'd put my name, my actual private phone number, and what have you. But unfortunately, that was a couple of months now. But I mean, I know myself, like the first time I'd heard about the method and what have you, it took me a long time, a lot of thinking, and something else has to shift in you before you actually say, okay, I'm going to do something about that. But I do hope to get a text from a number I don't recognize one of these days saying, can I have that information? But yeah, so
I have full body chills right now, just what you did. Like, I want to do that now with my book. I think I'm going to do that. That's so beautiful. And just I love that it's called The Cure for Alcoholism, because whether you're a skeptic or not, you're like, what?
yeah,
like, there's a cure. So
there's a draw right there.
Yeah. So that's so cool that you did that.
And I just love to hear back from somebody who would, because and like if everybody did that, then it wouldn't be very long getting out there, because people would tell other people. And I just know from I've seen it myself. I mean, I spoke about going to different shops and trying to hide how much you were drinking or how often or what have you. I mean, I've seen on more than one occasion, like a Monday morning, or Monday afternoon, 2 o'clock in the day, and there was a lady walking out the shop at the same time as I was walking in, and she had a box of beers, and I knew looking at her, she had the same haunted expression I know I must have had, where you're kind of like, here I am up here again, doing this again, and everybody's looking at me, everybody knows. And there's another evening we were coming home from relatives, and I think it was 9:15 on a Sunday, and a lady came out of the garage we were in, and she had 3 bottles of red wine and her little, say, 6-7-year-old in tow. And same thing, when I caught her eye as she was walking out the shop, and I was kind of looking, saying, you're not throwing a dinner party at 9:15 on a Sunday. That's probably all for you to see, even if not over 2 nights or what have you. And it just I know it's it's behind most doors here. It's definitely rampant, at least rampant here. I mean, it's just, I just wish it was something like this was better known to people, because there was a big shift here in drinking in recent years, where a smoking ban was rolled out across all the pubs and restaurants and what have you. And essentially what it did is completely, it wiped out smoking in the pubs and what have you, but essentially what it did was change the entire shift of the drinking culture from a public place to the home. So, and of course you're in your home all day, every day. So it became,
what you call it, it became private. It went behind doors, and so then it became acceptable to drink on your own by yourself. And I mean, I just think that it's really hit the ground running here. Katie, sorry, will I put a light on here?
Oh yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, no, just I'm completely losing the light here. 2 seconds.
Yeah.
It's gotta be better. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I
It's
forgot,
getting dark where you are,
yeah,
right?
what the days are exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's what is it? Just after 6 here now, but the short nights are drawing in very fast.
Yeah.
Sorry, I completely forgot where I was there. No, I'm fairly adamant that I know certainly heavy drinking is rampant in this country, and I'd say there's a large element where it's beyond people's control now at this stage. And for that reason, I just wish that TSM and the fact that there is medication available here, and if you just are able to go to your doctor to to present some of the studies and just essentially try and ask for help, and cite other people's experience if you need to or what have you. But to me, I just wish it was, it to me it should be the go-to, not say rehab or AA or white knuckling it. I mean, you're blaming the person for the affliction they have, and then you're asking, it's like they're already down and kicked with the disease, and then you're asking them to fight for their life. It's too much. You can't ask that of anybody. Everybody needs some help to beat any addiction, be it as I said, cigarettes, alcohol, gambling. I mean, nobody can do it by themselves. If they could do it by themselves, nobody would be addicted, because you would have spotted the problem, and you would have taken steps, or you would have stopped repeating the behavior before it became a problem. But that's not the way it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you tell people in your personal life that you've done this? Like, are you totally open about it? And do you know anyone who has started it in your circle?
No. It's essentially I told my family, my side of the family, my folks and my sisters and my brother. My husband knows and is extremely supportive. I haven't told his side of the family. And not that I don't want to. They're very loving and they're very supportive, and I'm blessed to have them. But it almost kind of hasn't come up in conversation.
Yeah.
Plus with friends as well, I'd still be hesitant while in the process to share. It's almost like I think I would feel happier to share at the point of extinction, or certainly with a few more months under my belt or what have you. But it's at this stage, no, it's not. It's AUD is not something I'm ashamed of at all. I mean, it's it happened to me, and it's like I just feel I'm proof that these things, you don't have to stay like that. These things you can do something about it. Like, but no, certainly I'd have no problem talking to anybody about it now. I don't personally know any people who are going through who are actually experiencing TSM here. I did ask my GP in a subsequent appointment if anybody else had started medication since myself, like, because she was so supportive and so helpful, and she just said that she was delighted to have something else to recommend, something else to help. And she's great. She's been a cheerleader for my own progress. It's lovely. I mean, it's especially when they're a doctor in a busy practice. They've got a hell of a lot of patients, and to look after, and for them to give you that one-to-one is fantastic. But she said that she actually had suggested it to one person, but she said that they didn't they weren't receptive. She said that in a lot of cases, she said the person has to want to change where they're at. And she said unfortunately a lot of people who will be at the same level of drinking as I was. She said some people are just almost resigned to their faith or things being the way they are, and they're so long in that that kind of that mindset or that lifestyle that they don't remember what not being like that is like. So it's they're just
she said, like, it's yeah, you have to want to take the tablet. You have to be religious about you, about it. You have to stay compliant. It's and that's what she said. You do need to want to change. And I think for a lot of people, I know I certainly was worried about at the start, was that this works or changes how you are very drastically, very quickly, or and there's almost that fear of, well, what do I do if I'm not doing this with my time all the time? Like suddenly your day is like opening like a chasm in front of you if you're not, because you've built everything around this bad habit. So I know there seems to be a lot of people from my experience on groups and stuff like that say they have the medication but they're waiting on this or they're waiting on that, or that they're so fearful of such harsh side effects that they kind of they're almost waiting for the perfect moment to start the medication. Whereas I know from experience that you're not going to be cured overnight. You're not going to. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. And I suppose for want of a better way of putting it, I mean, you still will be able to enjoy some drink, and that will become less so, and you'll want to less so, and like that it will happen slowly over time. Whereas I think for a lot of people with AUD, you've put alcohol on a pedestal, so it's you're almost protective of what that does for you and how it makes you feel. So it can be very daunting, the idea of that it'd be like a rug taken out from under you, that alcohol is not the biggest thing in your life anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and truthfully, I mean, I really wanted it. I was sick of all the consequences of the AUD that were like really putting this huge barrier in me really living my life and my best self. But I've shared this with so many people, and I too, same to you, like I shared it with my immediate family and friends, but didn't really start telling more people until, I mean, I was telling the world through YouTube, but like people close in my circle, just until I reached extinction, because I felt like I wanted to be like really sure and grounded in this and like myself. And so I was waiting to really tell more people until I had hit that point too. But yeah, you have to want it. And the people who I see in my life who, drink a lot, and I see their life, being maybe not as enjoyable because they're drinking. I see them having hangovers a lot and things like that. They've told me basically that they need alcohol, like it's their escape. They don't want to face reality without it. And so that was really eye-opening to me, because I assumed that everybody who drank a lot didn't want to, and that's just not the truth. So yeah, it's just an interesting observation. You do have to want it, and it can be scary because it does invoke a lot of change. Yes, it's not overnight, but as you get more sober, you start to realize the things that are in your life that came from you being in a drunken state for so long, and you have to really make these changes. But in my experience, I feel well enough and strong enough to kind of face these things and create the life that I want to from a conscious, intentional place, rather than just like you were saying, I'm just existing. I'm not really living my life. I'm not really engaged in it. So yeah, it is a big transition, but yeah, it happens gradually, and it's well worth it in my experience.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah.
So what would you tell, like, maybe this will be my final question, and then I'll ask if you have anything else to add. And you've spoken to this a little bit, but just what would you tell someone who is kind of teetering on, should I take the medication? Do I want to change? Like, I'm scared. What would you tell them now that you've got 6 months under your belt? You've had a lot of progress in your drink reduction. You're not at extinction yet, but you're well on your way. What's your words of advice there?
Oh, I would say definitely. I'd say go for it. Don't hesitate for a second. I would say, because I mean, I think as a method of overcoming an addiction, or not even addiction, even heavy use or use outside of what you feel is acceptable. I mean, this it's extremely gentle. I mean, it's it's a tablet, and as I said, the side effects are absolutely minimal. And and as your body acclimatizes, are gone completely. So, to me, it's absolutely win-win. I mean, it's you don't have to be on the street, you don't have to be homeless, you don't have to have your relationship lost. I mean, you can at any point in having a bad relationship with alcohol, at any point in that stage, you're suitable to use TSM. I mean, that's the beauty of it. It's not, you know, you have to be this bad, or you have to have a liver under stress or anything like that. I mean, as soon as you're ready, it's there. And I would say to not to hesitate for a second. I mean, it's absolutely win-win. And I mean, you could certainly, it opens up your life. It never would it take away from your life. It's, I mean, as I said, like alcohol, it just doesn't have benefits. It doesn't, you know, it's a negative influence in most people's lives. Yeah, okay, when you're down to, I suppose, when you're down to extinction, you can actually have and enjoy a glass and leave it at that. I mean, that's fantastic. Like, but I mean, other than that, I think I would wholeheartedly condone, as I'd say, if you feel like TSM is for you, absolutely go for it. Absolutely, without a doubt.
Thank you. And do you have anything like last words or last things to add before we finish up?
Oh, the other thing I suppose I would say would be there's several different groups. I suppose the Sinclair Warriors would be one on Facebook, and I found there's a lot of different types, like, but I found the group invaluable. I mean, especially seeing as I said, there's nobody I know who's going through a TSM, but thankfully through the group we actually know a few people locally in Ireland, and well, locally different counties and what have you. But I mean, it's great to speak to other people who are going through the same thing. And I mean, you know yourself, there's so many different facets, there's so many different experiences and different aspects to TSM, just as much as there is to every individual who has AUD. And if you have a question, I mean, there's people on these groups who, you know, who are medically are experts, you know, with the, I suppose, with the whole kind of TSM thing, or to certainly know as much as any one person can know about the method. But other than that, it's just to have other people who know how you feel and who share your hopes and fears and who understand it. Because as I said, like, my husband is like, he's so supportive and he's lovely, but he can never understand because he hasn't experienced it. Thank God. I mean, I wouldn't wish AUD on anybody, you know, but it's a beautiful thing. And I mean, there's real strong friendships being made, you know, on groups like that. And anything, any time of day or night, because we're all over the world, you know, you can put up a post and somebody will be online and somebody will answer you. And, you know, there's it's fantastic. I mean, I think that's a great part of the healing with using TSM as well, is to have other people understand exactly where you are and have done that, and who can offer advice and give different perspectives and different slants and opinions that you wouldn't even think of. And I mean, like, for me, that has proved absolutely invaluable. And that's, you know, the medication, stay compliant, peer support. I mean, you can't go wrong. I mean, that's the upshot of it, really, you know.
Yeah, and for those listening, I always link that group below all my videos, so you can find it there. And I see it growing so much. Like, it's just, there's so many people joining, and it's awesome to see that. Well, Kelley, thank you so very much for taking time to speak today on your experience and just sharing from the heart. And I really feel like this is going to reach and touch a lot of people. So thank you for being with me today.
Thank you so much. It's lovely speaking with you.
Maybe we'll connect again a little down the road when you've reached extinction and hear how you're doing at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be fantastic.
Yeah. All right. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Take care.
Bye.